Hi, thanks for joining me for this short tutorial where we're going to look at dealing with skies using Photoshop. So I'll open this image here, which is a raw file, which is an image we looked at the other night when we were meeting. So this is the image, you probably recognize it. So this is it opening in Camera Raw. I've done some minor tweaks to it, which it's remembered. But I'm just going to open that now. So the first thing I'll show you how to do is a graduated filter. Now, one of the problems with taking landscape photography is that very often the sky is very bright and parts of the landscape can be quite dark. The difference between the two is often too much for the camera sensor to handle. So you can end up with bleached out skies or dark foregrounds, etc. So to try and get a balance, the traditional way of dealing with this is to put in place a graduated filter, which was a glass filter, a piece of glass, that was dark at the top and clear at the bottom and gradually faded between the two. And you would slide that in front of the lens so that you just darkened the sky enough to get a good exposure. So that was the mechanical way of doing it, if you like, and that was called a grad or a graduated filter. But we can do the same thing electronically with Photoshop, and that's what we're going to look at doing here. So now that we've got this photo open, what I'm going to do is create a duplicate layer. I always do duplicate layers because, call that sky, because I like to have the original sat at the bottom of the pile over here. So I can always look at where I started to see how far I've come and whether I've made it better or worse. So on that layer, the sky layer, we're going to right click and choose create a smart object or convert to smart object. The reason for doing this is once a layer is a smart object, any filters that you apply to that layer can be altered later on. So normally if you apply a filter to a particular layer in Photoshop and then carry on doing other layers, etc., you can't actually go back and change the filter that you've applied in the first place. So by making it a smart object, you can go back and do it, and I'll show you how that works. So now we've made it a smart object, we can go up to filters and open up the Camera Raw filter, which will look exactly the same as Camera Raw as we first started. There we go. So that's the familiar Camera Raw screen that you probably all know and love. But in this case, we want to get to the graduated filter. And the graduated filter is up here in the masking panel. If you hover over that for a little while, that will come up. So we click on that masking panel and this panel opens up. And the third one in the list is the linear gradient. If you hover over that, you get a brief explanation as to what the linear gradient is. So if you just click on the linear gradient, you get all these adjustments come up down here, which is all the exposure, contrast, etc. But if you move your cursor over to the image, you'll see that we've now got crosshair cursor. So if I click and drag it down, we'll pull down this graduated filter. Now you can see the effect with the red shading. So the darker red shading is where the filter's having most effect, and the lighter red shading is where it's having least effect. The easy way to see how much effect it's having is to knock the exposure down, and you can see that the controls over here are affecting the stuff at the top much more so than at the bottom. Now you can also alter this graduated filter from where it starts and finishes, because you can get hold of the top one and drag it down. So the bottom bar represents the point where the filter has no effect. The top bar represents the point at which the filter has full effect, and the middle bar is in between, and you can use the middle bar to actually twist it either way if you want to, because this one, you can see I've put it down a bit of an angle. That's because this landscape's at a bit of an angle, so it sort of seems appropriate to do it that way. And we can sort of fiddle about and tweak as to where we want it to come in and where we don't. So if I double click to put the exposure back where it was, Now you can turn off this red shading if you want by going to show overlay up here, which is on auto, and just clicking that box and it will disappear. I usually leave it on because it's quite handy, because as soon as you touch an adjustment it goes off so you can see what you're doing. So it's not really a hindrance. So for this image what I do is just I take the exposure on the sky down a little bit. I'd also increase the contrast a little bit. I'd bring the blacks down a little bit. And what I might do is alter the colour temperature to make it a little bit bluer. So we'll move it a little bit more towards the blue. Not too much or it gets silly. So that's a sort of simple range of adjustment. That's already improved the image somewhat. So what we can do now is just click OK. And it will go away and apply that. And you'll see here on that layer, that sky layer, you've now got the smart filter and you've got camera raw sat down there. So if I double click on camera raw down there, like so, it will open up that layer again with all the adjustments we had, and you can go off again and adjust it, make some changes to it, which is a really useful thing to be able to do. So that's the traditional way of doing it, if you like, of adjusting the sky, is to use a graduated filter. So let's get rid of that, and we'll delete that. The other way that's in Photoshop now, another duplicate layer here I'll do, and we'll call that sky again, and click OK. Now the other thing we can do is replace the sky. So we've got a bit of artificial intelligence built into this. If you go down there, there's sky replacement. Now the thing about skies in most landscape pictures is it's usually quite easy to see a line where the sky transitions to the land. And so Photoshop finds it quite easy to automatically locate that line, which is what it's done in this case. It's already changed the picture for me. So it includes a whole set of skies that you can put in, different skies that you can add just by selecting them and popping them in. And what you'll find you can also do is you can change the brightness, color temperature, etc., and the scale. So you can make the sky bigger or smaller than the original. You can flip it left to right. You can do all sorts of things. And when you've finished, you can get it to send it to a new layer or a duplicate layer. So now what I suggest you do is actually use your own skies rather than these, because these will get all very well known very quickly. So don't use these skies. But if you hit the plus button down there, you can add your own sky. And this is quite clever because it will select a sky from an image, so you don't have to have already extracted a sky. If you've got another landscape which has got a great sky in it, you can use this, select that photo, and Photoshop will identify the sky in it and extract the sky and make it available for you in this panel so you can use it in your picture. So it's a very powerful tool, but a bit of a cheat. So that's how you do a sky replacement. Obviously the best thing to do is to get the photo right in the camera. It saves all this messing about, but if you do need to rescue a picture, this is a way to do it. Okay, so thanks for watching and look forward to seeing you soon.